Francisco and Juliana had passed natural sciences. At the last session of their faith apologetics, more than half of their classmates stood up and said, "I believe." The John Project had paid off, and now, at the end of the year break, they had a Bible study group at Edgar's house. The attendees were his mother, who was progressing favorably in her cancer treatment, Marlon and Luis, and of course, Francisco, Juliana, and their parents. Suddenly, the doorbell rang.
Are we expecting someone else?
When she opened the door, what a surprise! It was Teacher Harry himself.
Are you going to give us a pop quiz?
Teacher Harry, with a humble smile, replied that he rather wanted to learn with them. He said that he had learned a lot of theory with Francisco and Juliana, but now he wanted to move on to practice, knowing Jesus and learning to trust in His Word. The group accepted him with joy, and Edgar welcomed him, saying that there was no homework, but a lot of faith. Sabbath School Like presents the series, The Gospel of John. Lesson 13, Epilogue, Knowing Jesus and His Word. For 12 weeks, we have studied Jesus as the Word, the Lamb, the Bread of Life, the Good Shepherd, the Resurrection, and the Life. We have seen how He fulfilled prophecies, performed signs, and made it clear that He was one with the Father and the Holy Spirit. But now, it is time to take the next step, not to remain in theoretical knowledge, but to move on to practice. How? By believing like the Suster, taking His message to the world, and trusting fully in His promises. At the end of chapter 20, John writes the purpose of the book. Why didn't he finish the gospel there? Wasn't that the perfect closure? Why write a chapter 21? Because in chapter 21, the apostle presents 3 scenes that invite us to move from theory to practice. 3 scenes that challenge us to live a life transformed by Christ. So this week's question is, what 3 scenes in John's final chapter invite us to move from theory to practice? First of all, the meeting at the Sea of Galilee. Have you ever heard the phrase, seeing things from another perspective?
Yes! Like when we go up to a viewpoint.
And the city looks very different.
Well, something like that happened in the Sea of Galilee. After a full night of unsuccessful fishing, the disciples were exhausted and frustrated. From their earthly perspective, it looked like all was lost. But at dawn, someone from the shore with the best perspective gave them an instruction that would change everything.
Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will catch something.
As they obeyed, they caught so many fish that they could not lift the net. It was then that John said,
"It is the Lord."
Suddenly, it all made sense. Jesus was showing them that true abundance did not depend on their efforts, but on their connection to Him. This scene shows us a contrast that we could well call theology from below versus theology from above. Theology from below is limited to what we can see and understand from our human perspective. What is theoretical, what we calculate, what seems logical to us. The disciples, from that perspective, had already lost hope after fishing all night. But Jesus taught them theology from above, a divine perspective that transcends theory, the calculable, the logical. From that perspective, the empty net was not a failure, but a preparation for the miracle. Jesus, from the shore, saw what they could not see and showed them where to find true abundance. Have you noticed? We often live trapped in theology from below, relying only on our knowledge, our calculations, our logic. But Jesus invites us to look from above, to see things in faith, and to trust His guidance, even when we do not understand. As He told the disciples, He says to us today, "Cast the net where I tell you to cast it." Trust my perspective. Yes, the encounter at the Sea of Galilee was not just about fish. It was a lesson in perspective. Jesus doesn't want us to get stuck in our human limitations. He calls us to live from a theology from above, trusting that He sees the big picture and has the power to transform our frustration into abundance. Are you willing to let Jesus be your guide and look at things from His divine perspective? Second, the restoration of Peter. Have you ever walked around the house in the dark and tripped over something because you couldn't find the light switch?
Yes! And I hurt my little toe once.
And that really hurt.
That's right, being in the dark can be frustrating and even painful, but as soon as you turn on the light, everything changes. You can see what you couldn't see before, avoid obstacles, and you no longer need to walk blindly. Well, something like that happened with Peter. How many times had he denied the Lord? 3 times, and since then his life was like that dark house, full of guilt and faults. But now, on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus waited for them with a broiled fish and bread for breakfast, Jesus asked Peter 3 times if he loved him. Why did he ask Peter 3 times if he loved him? The same number of times he denied him. To bring him out of the darkness, Jesus was the switch that turned on the light in his life. Listen up. The Greek term that John used to refer to the first 2 times Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me?" is agapao, alluding to agape love, the highest expression of God's love. Peter answered him, "Lord, you know that I love you." But now the Greek term is phileo, which is also to love, but as a friend. Why did Peter not tell the Lord that he loved him with agape love? Because he did not want to fall back into the overconfidence that led him to deny Jesus. He had learned a lesson in humility. Before the cross, he would have answered without thinking that he loved him with the agape love and that he would even give his life for him. Now, after the cross, he dared not even hint at it. Did you notice? Peter passed from the darkness of self-sufficiency to the light of humility. Humility is not a matter of theory. It is not enough to preach about humility, to recognize that Jesus was humble, or to say that we are humble. Humility is a practical matter that is noticeable even in how we respond to people. Peter undoubtedly understood Jesus' words when he said that he who walks by day does not stumble because he has the light of this world, but he who walks by night stumbles because he has no light. What about you? Are you willing to let Jesus turn on the light in your life? And third, the statement about Juan. Have you ever run a relay race?
Yes, it's teamwork.
Exactly. In a relay race, each runner has his or her own distance to cover, and everyone has a specific role to play in getting the team to the finish line. What happens if one runner stops looking ahead and starts worrying about how the others are running?
He wastes time and ruins the race.
Exactly. Instead of moving forward, he gets distracted, and the whole team suffers. Well, something similar happened when Peter asked Jesus what was going to happen to John. In restoring Peter to ministry, Jesus foretold the way he would die. Then Peter began to look into the next runner. What about John? How would he die? Jesus' answer is a great lesson for all of us.
If I want him to remain until I come, what about you? You follow me.
We cannot run the race of faith by looking sideways, comparing ourselves with others, or questioning the call of our brothers. Our gaze must be fixed on Jesus. As Hebrews 12:1-2 says, "Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith." To move from theory to practice is also to accept what God has for me without comparing myself with what He has, or will have for other people. That you follow me, that Jesus said to Peter, touched Edgar's heart, and he said, "I want to follow Jesus." His mother, with tears in her eyes, hugged him and said, "If you follow him, I will follow him." Marlon looked at Luis and said, "Well, if Edgar is going to be apostle number 13, then I'll be number 14. And I'll be number 15, Luis said. Teacher Harry watched silently. Then, his voice breaking, he added, "I have spent my whole life searching for answers in books, experiments, and theories. But you have shown me that the greatest truth is in this Jesus who changes hearts. Today, I understand that my relay race is not over. I want to pass my baton to Him and let Him guide my life. One day, when Christ returns and the Apostle John is resurrected with the redeemed, he will understand that for many centuries, his gospel fulfilled the dual purpose in millions and millions of people. The apologetic one, that they may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. And the evangelistic one, that believing they may have life in His name. Sabbath School Like Plus invites you to continue studying the series, The Gospel of John. Subscribe now to the channel and don't miss anything.